On a bone-chilling night, Carlos Gaze revealed an unspoken resolve as he whispered a proposal that instantly tensed everyone's hearts. How about we try a completely illegal survival tactic? If necessary, we might just have to use the remains of our unfortunate buddy. The suggestion hit each person like a cold hammer, and Marcello's reaction was almost instinctive. His distorted face showed fear and anger. He couldn't believe a moral boundary was mentioned. Ready to protest, he found no good punchline, like in a dark comedy. Some compared it to organ donation, but Xiao Shuai countered, it needs family consent. Where are they now? Each face revealed pain and struggle. Some individuals raised their smokes as if saying, "Don't make me laugh, I truly don't want to giggle." Others silently weighed their thoughts, with eyes flickering between survival desire and moral struggle, as the heavy atmosphere enveloped the night, battling internally with fears and morals. Their breath froze in the cold air, and their spirits felt fragile in the face of survival tests. It was not simply a craving for food, but a deep exploration of humanity, morals, and survival instincts. On 8th day, Kokonikli wrote a letter to his parents, describing their picturesque surroundings, surrounded by mountains with a frozen hole in the distance, and 27 survivors present. Today, Nandala's sister passed away. They certainly wished for just one more chance to see their family. By the 9th day, someone said something, and under unbearable hunger and survival pressure, the survivors made an extreme choice. They quietly cut open the remains of their deceased companions in a hidden corner, like a top-secret mission no one else could witness, to alleviate psychological pressure. While such actions went against moral standards, they had to set aside their warriors temporarily in the face of life and death. Meanwhile, some survivors still held hope, praying silently for rescue, gazing skyward with anticipation and despair, saddened and shocked by companions' extreme choices. Soon, someone luckily found an old radio. Though broken, they hoped to fix it for rescue news. But when the radio finally sprang to life, the message was utterly despairing. 17 planes had conducted 66 search and rescue missions within the 10-day limit, but found nothing. The search was set to resume early next year when the snow would melt, making it easier to locate body remains. Based on Rescue Department's past experiences, no survivors found in 34 Andes crises. Those once hopeful are now in despair. At this point, Marcello spoke again, heavy with grief and self-reproach, urging, "Eat, we must survive," and stuffed meat into his mouth. Xiao Shuai and the others refused to eat, determined to find a battery. They headed towards the tracking position without plan or gear, driven by their obsession for survival, which led to discoveries. Among the visible aircraft wreckage, they found the remains of some teammates, with several young lads lost here. Unfortunately, as night fell, they still hadn't located a battery. Xiao Shuai insisted on continuing his search, thinking, if the bodies are here, the tail section must be nearby. However, the temperature on the mountain was 30 degrees lower than down below, and once night fell, they'd surely. The three underestimated the power of nature. The sun melted the snow, and they found themselves lost in it, unable to move as night approached. They could only huddle together for warmth, desperately patting each other to avoid going numb. At last, the sun rose the next day, covering them in snow. Fortunately, they broke free. They learned the more they wished to escape, the more perilous the mountains. They rode on pieces of the aircraft down the mountain, accelerated like they were skiing. However, returning, Xiao Shuai felt even more despair as he saw the endless white snow with no signs of life. He received the meat from the man and held onto it tightly until late into the night, when he eventually made up his mind to pop it into his mouth and chewed it half-heartedly for a few moments. It was at this precise moment that he first profoundly realized that his hopes of returning home were dwindling rapidly. Nando trained diligently every day, sustained by a single thought: beyond these mountains lies the lush and verdant valley of Chile. He declared firmly, even in the absence of rescue personnel, "I am determined to climb up and witness it with my own eyes." However, after enduring the relentless blizzard for a full 17 days, they were ultimately forced to accept their helplessness. Amid this desperate and tense environment, the cabin unexpectedly filled with laughter. Eating meat had become a habit. 27 people were crammed together with varying emotions. Some were lost in their thoughts, others loudly expressed. Suddenly, an avalanche crashed down on the cabin, trapping the survivors underneath the snow. A man popped his head out to breathe, struggling to crawl out under immense pressure, and the situation was worse than he could ever imagine. The entire cabin was almost completely filled with snow and ice, and the survivors desperately struggled to dig out a glimmer of hope. The sounds of cries for help, breaking noises, and mutual encouragement intertwined tightly with one another. Yet, Despite some managing to survive, not everyone was granted such fortune. In the depths of that dark, frigid, and icy space, a man, trembling with effort, managed to ignite a light, bringing a faint yet precious glimmer of light. They were astonished to discover that despite being tightly buried under thick snow, oxygen still circulated in the surrounding air. However, to their dismay, they were completely unable to judge how much heavy snow was covering them above. The survivors emerged one by one from the snow-covered cabin, their faces radiating ecstatic joy as they celebrated this miraculous survival together. They sat comfortably in the snow, overflowing with happiness, like children frolicking in the snow, freely expressing their inner joy and sense of liberty. While busily clearing away the accumulated snow, they resolutely decided to put forth more energy and motivation than they ever had, secretly planning to excavate the crashed plane in the future for rescue purposes. However, such an unplanned action would undoubtedly render their current situation even more precarious. 34 days later, as the snow melted, the survivors' situation worsened. Arturo's lungs were severely compromised, and while Zayo, Shuai, and Roberto tried to save him, no one could breathe for him. Ultimately, Arturo passed away at 22. On the 36th day, 4 survivors voluntarily decided to descend the mountain towards Argentina. They donned multiple layers of clothing to withstand the cold winter nights. Soon after, however, Sayoshi's situation took a turn for the worse, accidentally falling off the mountain. When he regained consciousness, he found that his injury had become infected, meaning the team had to turn back. Since no one could carry Zayo, he ultimately decided to return alone while the other 3 pressed on. Fortunately, Nando brought back uplifting news, stating that they had journeyed east for more than 3 hours before unexpectedly discovering the tail section behind a hillock. The reason they couldn't locate it earlier was because it had been hurled far away during the explosion, and at present it was encircled by luggage and clean jackets. Sayoshi's eyes sparkled at the sight of the food, thinking about sharing it together. Nando kindly helped him open up some of the packages. They found a battery in the fuselage. Too heavy, it was best to take the radio for repairs. At that point, one of the 4 felt weak and thought the radio wouldn't be of any use, yet he was willing to venture a risky attempt for everyone's sake. However, they were prepared for the worst. If the radio failed, they would continue. Roy fixed the lamp, but the radio showed no results after connection. The others faced dire situations too. Each day, they lose more lives. Food dwindles, forcing them to scrape meat off bones. What was unimaginable is now norm. Sayoshi lamented being just 25 with so much left undone, wishing to see his family, and even to dance. At Dewey's place, Nando found waterproof materials to wrap cables, but a short circuit occurred during connection, causing the radio to explode. To this day, there are still 17 survivors on that mountain. 4 came back with bad news, reminding everyone to be extra cautious. On this sunny day, Ding Ding insisted on documenting their lives with photos but had no idea who to show them to, perhaps future family members. If they ever see those pictures, the survivors would surely resurrect in their dreams. Sayoshi knew his time was short. Nando, I'll die content if I can help my teammates live. He passed away at 25. Numa Tokoti passed away on December 11, 1972, holding a letter that read, "The greatest love is to sacrifice oneself for a friend." Sayoshi's words provided immense strength to the survivors. The survivors, armed with their already prepared meat and fully prepared, are about to embark on their journey into the unknown tomorrow. On the 61st day, the 3 headed west to Chile, seeking survival hope in the endless Andes. Every step challenged life's limits as they sought shelter for their sleeping bags, curling up through freezing nights. In such dire circumstances, even the mountain's beautiful scenery was shrouded in the shadow of death. Nando believed that the Andes would not stretch endlessly. The snow would eventually cease, and by crossing a valley they would reach their destiny. However, their food lasted a week, and decisions in this extreme environment were fraught with risks. Deciding whether to stay by the wreckage or move forward, each choice could be a matter of life and death. Ultimately, Nando and Roberto decided to keep moving, while the other chose to go back to the wreckage. As they progressed, they discovered brown peaks and snow-free areas, undoubtedly igniting their hopes further. The remaining food would last for 10 days, and they were determined to forge ahead. It was yet another grueling trek, crossing peak after peak, with the fitter ones leading the way. The ones behind found it easier alternating, eventually walking out of the snow after several days. Reaching a mountain, they gulped toward the liquor, chewed tough food, and threw up that night. The next day, they found a river but encountered disaster. Nando saw a frog on a nearby rock. Roberto ignored it, seeing a horseman across the river, finally glimpsing hope in despair. The person across passed a note. Nando jotted it down, prompting immediate aerial rescue action. At the farmhouse below the mountain, Nando and Roberto felt elated as they crossed the high peaks, finally escaping the plight.